So let's go on to the NFL.
We're gonna do our weekly Tua bitch session, or we're gonna whine and complain about the Dolphins.
We'll try to keep it to a minimum, but it just shows how it just shows how disappointed and sad we are about our football team. But bright spot, the Dolphins did win on Thursday night somehow, some way. What are your thoughts about the win against the Ravens?
Well, what's funny is that, like, they're, for the people who are the Tua defenders, I can sort of understand it, but it's basically like when you go back and look through the games that Tua has won, there's really a similarity between most of them, right? Like, for instance, right. I was watching clips. I was watching highlights of the Cardinals-Dolphins game from last season, where the Dolphins won 34-31.
Right.
Now, the offense didn't score 34 points. The offense scored 27 points because the defense picked up a fumble and ran it back for a touchdown.
Right.
Okay. To be fair, Tua was really good in that game. I mean, he made some throws in that game. I'm like, I don't feel like I've seen that this year. Like, I don't, there were some throws in that game where I was like, all right, can you do more of that? Like, if you do more of that, you could be pretty good.
Right.
But yeah, and like the game against the Ravens, they had a fumble recovery back for a touchdown, and you look at the score of the game, it was 22-10, like they win a game, they get a defense, you got to get some turnovers on defense or a defensive touchdown. You have a weird score, you kick a couple field goals, you have some wacky kind of plays, like that play where he threw the ball to the offensive lineman and he almost scored the touch, that was a really amazing play. I got to give it up for that guy.
Yep. Shout out to Robert Hunt.
Yeah. So, like there's when you go back through most of the games that Tua has won, a lot of them look like that. There's a few games here and there where he scores a bunch of points, but
right.
Yeah, it's really they kind of look like that. So it kind of just makes you go, yeah, I don't really see what we're getting. I did find, like, we were listening to Albert Breer on Colin Cowherd, and he was saying how he doesn't think that Flores and Chris Greer are going to pin their future on Tua. And that might be true. I mean, look, if they can go get Deshaun Watson, they're going to go get Deshaun Watson. But I don't know who else they're going to get, in terms of a free agent quarterback. Like, are you going to go get Nick Foles or something? Like, I don't know. Maybe I'd go with Nick Foles. I don't know. That's an interesting, or Teddy Bridgewater or something. I don't know.
You're such a hater. Yeah. Look. It's not a good position to be in. Like I was texting you, the Dolphins can either keep Tua and move on with this roster that's not very talented, but they'll have some draft picks and they'll have some cap space. If they trade for Deshaun Watson, then they will have no picks and no cap space and not a very good roster with a really good quarterback.
Yeah, so that's why I'm kind of like, I understand Deshaun Watson's really good, but it's like, guys, the roster is just not very good. The offensive line's not good. I mean, they have so many needs. I don't know why you'd want to give up more picks when you need offensive linemen, you need pass rushers, you need. I mean, maybe you don't necessarily need running backs because the offensive line is so bad. Like, if you fix the offensive line, the running game will kind of fix itself a little bit. But like, look, last night I was watching some YouTube clips of Tua. I was watching some YouTube channels of people breaking down, like I was telling you before we started the podcast, JT O'Sullivan, former NFL quarterback, who should be the owner of a sports bar, because JT O'Sullivan's, I mean, that is a sports bar name.
It's in South Boston.
Yeah, I mean, dude, I mean, that's just,
it writes itself.
Happen. I mean, it just happens. It just happens on its own.
Hey, Paul, you been to JT's?
Yeah, or just O'Sullivan's.
That's right, or O'Sullivan's. Anyway, yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I can understand where people would defend Tua a little bit, because I was watching some clips of him. I've seen different things where it's like, okay, if you're going to play in a rhythm kind of timing offense where it's like you snap the ball, you make a read or two, you throw the ball. Okay. Because that's kind of how he has to play because he doesn't have a good arm. He doesn't have a big arm. He can't really throw the ball really hard. So, yeah, like I can kind of understand that. And I can see different things. Like I saw stuff in the Falcons game. I saw stuff in the Jaguars game. I saw stuff like I was watching stuff from last year. There are throws he made against the Chiefs. There are throws he made against the Cardinals. You know, where it's like, okay, like if you can do that kind of stuff, like I guess I can sort of see it. But what people don't understand is, and I'm going to get kind of, I guess, in the weeds on this, like if you're not going to be really big and you don't have a big arm and you don't have like really tremendous athletic ability, then the other stuff has to be like pinpoint, like you got to be on with all the other stuff. And the problem that I see with him is like pre-snap. I mean, dude, you're not going to be able to get away from people. So you need to, pre-snap, you need to identify what's going on. And if you're being blitzed, you're not going to get away from it. Who's your hot route? Where are you going to throw the ball? Like there was a play against Jackson. No, it was against Atlanta. And it was basically, he had no backs in the backfield. So it was like four wide receivers. Okay. And he had, the defense it was like 5-on-5 on the line, right? Because they had a tight end in blocking.
Right.
And then there was another defender who was kind of by a receiver, but you could tell he was probably going to come blitz. So that it would have been 6-on-5. So that would have been a free rusher. Okay. Now the play ends up basically Tua snaps the ball. He drops back. There was a receiver to his right and the cornerback was like off him a little bit. And the receiver just ran up and stopped and turned within like half a second. Okay. So at that point, it's like throw him the ball. Now the play ends up Tua gets sacked. That's not on the offensive line. That's on you. That's pre-snap. You have to know how to deal with that stuff. You got to know the protections. That's why I'm kind of like, when people talk about Mac Jones, yeah, he's limited, but from what I've heard, pre-snap, he's really good, which he better be because he doesn't have the talent to make up for it.
Right.
So and then that's the thing, like I've seen stuff from Tua where it's like, he's really accurate. I've seen other stuff where he recognizes stuff and he makes a bad throw and it ends up being intercepted, and then there's plays where you see, and it's like, okay, I don't know if that's a good play or not, because it's like he threw the ball, the guy caught it, it was a touchdown or it was a big play. And I'm like, should he have thrown it? Did he decide to throw there before the snap and just throw it anyway? And then it worked out? Like, because sometimes that happens. So, yeah, again, I can see where some of the people are coming from when they're positive about Tua, but at the same time, there's got to be, and I don't know if that's him. I don't know if that's coaching. I don't know if that's game preparation. I mean, we've criticized the coaching staff. I don't know. So as far as them wanting to move forward with him, I guess I could see how they could talk themselves into it. I mean, they talked themselves into drafting him and they talked themselves into drafting a wide receiver.
I just don't, I don't think there's a better option. Like, I don't think, you might at this point, you might as well just stick with the quarterback who knows the system, who's already got a rapport with the coaches, unless you're going to change coaches. I don't have an issue with it. I thought that, like we talked about, I mean, I think, the Dolphins defense showed up, but how much of that was just, they were just blitzing the whole time and the Ravens have no
pass rushers. They can't rush the quarterback.
Right. So the Ravens can't really, they have all their running backs are hurt. So what the Ravens are basically going to do. So it's kind of like, they won the game, but it's not a game that I feel good about. They scored one offensive touchdown. If they don't get that defensive touchdown, I don't know that they win the game. So it's one of those.
They don't get the defensive touchdown. It's a different looking game.
Right.
That's the thing that people need to account for when your defense scores a touchdown. If you didn't get that, like how would the rest of the game have looked? Like, would you have been able to make that up on your own, on your offense? I don't know. Like, I do think that there's probably, a lot of times in life, the answer is somewhere in the middle. So Colin Cowherd has been consistently, Flores is a good coach. It's just, he doesn't have a quarterback. And we're going, well, no, I don't know that he's a good coach and their roster stinks. There's probably somewhere in the middle.
Right.
Somewhere in the middle, maybe closer to one side or the other. That maybe the answer is on, because we're not in the locker room. We don't
Yeah,
really know.
so I get myself worked up about this, and it drives me nuts. But then I heard Trent Dilfer on the Rich Eisen show, and
Yeah.
talk about making me feel worse. So he said, basically, he watched the whole Thursday night game, and he said that, Tua was okay. He did some good things, um, but he said, the Dolphins just aren't great right now. He's like, they just don't have. He's like, they don't have a whole lot of offensive. They've got Jalen Waddle and a bunch of tight ends. And he's like, they
And
just.
actually, look, I think Jalen Waddle's pretty good. I think if Tua had more time to throw, I think maybe he'd be a little better. But like, no, I was some of the stuff I was watching yesterday. Like, he seems to be a pretty good route runner. Like, he's paying attention to details on routes where it's like, okay, you run down here, you turn your head, and then you run out, so you get the cornerback off you and you get separation, like stuff like that. That's important. Like, if a receiver does that, they're not just some lazy route runner. They're not just running out there, here, throw me the ball. So yeah, I mean, I probably would have liked it better if they had drafted an offensive lineman, but
Yeah, so he's basically saying, that they're like Tua's doing what the coaches are asking him to do.
yeah,
But he's like, they're just not explosive. He's like, and they're not going to be explosive this year, and they probably won't be explosive next year. And if you give them, he's like, but you gave them enough time to get a bunch, enough playmakers around him, then they could have something. He really liked Charlie Fry being the play caller, and then he said something that that I disagree with, and I think I have evidence that I'm right. So he said, Tua pushed the ball down the field as much as he could with having a broken finger. And
okay.
and and my reaction to that is, oh, so it's the broken finger? That's the problem? Like, there's no evidence. Like, it's been said by people who know what they're talking about. He doesn't have a very strong arm. So and my complaint, and
Like, there were throws. I mean, again, I was watching a bunch of clips yesterday. Yeah, like some of the throws that are, when I say downfield, I mean 10, 15 yards, something like that. On some of those throws, you're watching them and it's like, that's taken a while to get there. Like, you're literally watching it going, okay, are you a college quarterback or an NFL quarterback? Because that's taken a while to get, which again is why I'm saying Tua needs to be perfect on the other stuff. Like, he needs to anticipate stuff and get the ball out quicker because it's not going that fast.
yeah. So yeah, I know. I've been confused by Trent Dilfer the whole time. He's been the biggest proponent of Tua, and I just think honestly, I think he knows football. I'm not questioning his football
Yeah,
knowledge. He knows what
yeah.
he's talking about, which is why it's so confusing. I just think he just missed on this. I think he just missed on, you know, Tua being he said he was a generational talent. I think he just got this one wrong. It doesn't mean Tua can't play quarterback. It doesn't mean he's not good enough to play in the NFL. He is. It's
Look, I
just,
think that, like I said, there's stuff I see where I'm like, okay, if you can be consistent with that, if you were on a better team that had a better offensive line and some more playmakers, I can see how you could be a productive quarterback for several years and win, a good number of your games. But so I can sort of defend Trent Dilfer on that, and I guess he's actually worked with Tua. He knows him, so he knows the person. So I guess I can sort of see how you could say, well, I think that he gets different stuff, and like you can watch certain things, and I'm like, I do think he gets some stuff, and like when he talks about the play calling, yeah, that I've seen. If you really, really watch some of the plays that they run, yeah, there's some kind of creative stuff on it. There were some touchdowns in the Falcons game where it was like, that's a nice play design, that Charlie Fry made, which I think you need to do that kind of stuff. But I mean, just in today's NFL, you got to do that regardless of who your quarterback is, but especially with Tua, like, I think you need to do some stuff to kind of make things a little easier for him. Yeah, I think you're right. I think he just missed. I mean, I think he probably, like I said, he knows Tua, so I think he just, the guy, you watch him, you see him study and stuff, and it's like, the other thing I was thinking was, here's a good way to think about it. I told you I was watching that YouTube channel with JT O'Sullivan, right? That guy's like an encyclopedia of offensive and of NFL football, like offense knowledge, right? I mean, the stuff he's saying, all this stuff, and it's like, yeah, he knows all this stuff. And no offense to the dude, he actually played in the NFL, which you got to be pretty damn good to play in the NFL. But I mean, it's not like he was a franchise quarterback,
right,
or a consistent starter, for years and years. So he knows all that, and he was a backup for a little bit.
Right.
Like, that's how hard it is to play quarterback in the NFL. Like, you're even the guy, he's an encyclopedia of football knowledge, but can you go out there and do it?
Yeah. So then, and I've listened to a bunch of different people that say, well, Tua doesn't have a very strong arm. And then I read something by Ben Solak, who writes for The Ringer. And he basically was talking about the Dolphins. The question was like, are they all in on Tua or something like that? And he goes through, what he thinks about it. And then at one point he says, Tua has a lack of arm strength and it's getting worse. And it's just like, so I'm confused. So I'm just, again, as we talk, every time we talk about this, I get more confused. I don't understand. Where's the, like, if you've been telling me he's special, but I can't see it. And all these other people are telling me he's not, there's nothing like spectacular about him. And I was watching, I went back and I was just, I think as a Dolphins fan, I think we get into a bad place. And so I was looking on YouTube and watching some clips of before the NFL draft in 2020, before Tua was drafted. And they were debating, whether to take him on one of the shows. I think it was Get Up on ESPN. And basically Mike Tannenbaum was a former GM, and he was like, look, this is too much of a risk. Like, you can't fully evaluate the injury. So he's like, there are times to take a risk and there are times when you shouldn't. This is not something I would mess around with. Justin Herbert can win you a lot of games, but this is going to be a problem, and basically, they went to Dan Orlovsky, the former quarterback, and he was like, no, this is exactly the guy you take the risk on. He does special things as a quarterback. And then, Mike Tannenbaum said he doesn't think the gap between Justin Herbert and Tua was very big. And so then they went back to Orlovsky and he said, no, the gap is really big. Tua is way better than Justin Herbert is. It's not even a question. He looks off this guy. He reads this. He had all these quarterback traits that, whatever. And that Clark's reaction is very perfect. That was my reaction. So I said, now listen, I'm not punishing him for not knowing better too much because this is before the draft. But there are some things that are not disputable, right? So then he puts up Orlovsky. They put up highlights. This was the best part. So they put up some highlights of Tua's. This was before after the first season was over. So Tua had already played in the NFL at this point. And Orlovsky's still saying, Tua's going to be great. Just wait. And so they put up, they played the Kansas City Chiefs last season.
Okay. Yeah.
Right. And so they show two deep balls he throws where I think one got picked off or one was, whatever.
Well, one that was tipped, and it was actually
right.
Was the game out of hand at that point because he started throwing the field because the game was out of hand.
Right, okay. Right. So he throws a deep ball and he shows, he didn't quite get it, exactly where it needs to, the trajectory needs to, and he shows on the graphic, the trajectory needs to be here. And, this is where the ball should be thrown, whatever. And I'm going, okay, so he's got to lay it out there farther. And then he goes, and I know he can do it because let me pull up an Alabama highlight. So he pulls up the Alabama highlight. He throws it deep. The receiver is 5 steps past. Like, he's 5 yards by the defender. Like, a high school kid could have made that throw. Like, when you're that wide, it's like being wide open in the backyard. Anybody could make that throw. Like, there's nothing special about, whatever. And it's like, yeah, he can't get it to that point because his arm can't do that.
Yeah.
The only way he can throw the deep ball is to be like Russell Wilson. He's got to throw a pop fly that lands exactly where it's supposed to. And that takes a long time to figure out. I'm not saying he can't do that. And I don't think throwing the ball deep is his biggest problem. His biggest problem is going to be throwing the ball 15 to 20 yards down the field and driving it into small windows.
Yeah.
That's the problem.
I haven't really seen him do, yeah.
Right. So you're telling me, oh, well, all he's going to do is this. It's like, yeah, but he doesn't have the arm strength for that.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And again, I'm not saying that he has to be some quarterback who chucks the ball way down the field all the time. Justin Herbert doesn't even do that. He could because he's got the arm strength, but he doesn't even do that. You don't necessarily need to do that to be productive in the NFL, but you have to, you got to get some chunks of yards. Like if you can get every now and then get a 15, 20-yard completion, maybe you get a 10-yard completion and the receiver breaks a tackle and then it turns into a 25-yard completion. Like you have to be able to get some of those. And in order to do some of that, you got to drop back, you got to fire the ball into some tight places and throw the guy open. He can't already be open. You got to throw it to where he's going to be.
Right. So, yeah. So, I mean, basically in conclusion with the Dolphins, it's very sad. Basically, we're not going to be.
They had a bunch of draft picks and they and also they made some trades that were looking back were ill-advised because they traded stuff for draft picks and they didn't get back anywhere near the same value that they traded away. So yeah, they kind of crapped the bed, really. I mean, they really did.
And so yeah, so basically, I mean, what it sounded like without saying it, Trent Dilfer, it sounded like what he was saying was, well, they'll have to, once they have all of this great stuff around him, then he'll be good. And it's like, okay, so we're not how. So basically, I can just see it on the horizon, right? Let's say the Dolphins win some more games because their schedule is pretty favorable the rest of the way. Let's say they win some more games here. They end up, it's not horrible. They keep the coach and the GM. Well, next year we're not going to score any points anyway. And next year they're going to have to make the playoffs for the coach and the GM to keep their job. They probably won't make the playoffs. So then they're going to fire everybody, right? We're going to get a new coach, and then Tua is going to have to deal with a whole new offense he's got to learn, so he's going to suffer because of it. So it's incredibly disappointing. Or like I said, the other option is we're going to have Deshaun Watson on a team that's 4-12. I mean, it's just yeah, we'll have a quarterback. It's great. But we won't have any cap space, so we can't really do anything. We're going to be depending on all these draft picks that we made that we've missed on a million of them. So anyway, I hate to put all of that into after a Dolphins win.
I do think what's funny is I think what's going to end up happening is they're going to talk themselves into Tua next year because their next few games they play the Jets and the Panthers and. And I don't care that the Panthers have Cam Newton. Have you watched Cam Newton in the last couple of years? Come on. The Panthers are not that good. So, the Dolphins could end up winning the next 3 games. And Tua could, even if they don't win the next 3, Tua could look good in these games. Like I said, there's been times he's looked good. So,
Well, it speaks to me about how it just speaks to me about how bad the situation is when they put Jacoby Brissett in, he gets hurt. So they have to put in the quarterback that's already hurt to play. So now they have both their quarterbacks hurt. If that doesn't speak to how pathetic the offensive line and the coaching has been I don't even know what to say. When you're just repeatedly getting your quarterbacks hurt, I'm having I have a hard time with, well, Flores was a good coach. Really? Really?
Yeah, because people will talk about the defense, and I'm like, yeah, and I thought it was hilarious earlier this season when I looked it up. Yeah, they got a bunch of turnovers last year on defense. Okay, that makes your defense look way better than it really is. Their defense is not that good, and them having to blitz all the time. They don't have pass rushers, so anyway.